Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we are going to look into Nimrod and make the connections between the first biblical Antichrist after the great flood of Noah's day, and can just make those connections between our modern Nimrod, essentially Donald Trump. He is the current Antichrist of our day, and I hope to make some connections for you here. So here on the Wikipedia page for Nimrod, we see that he was the great-grandson of Noah, and one thing that I wanted to point out that I saw here, written by Flavius Josephus, who was a Roman Jewish historian that was born just a few years, I believe, after the resurrection of Yahusha Jesus. And so he wrote down some of the information that the Jews knew about Nimrod, or had in their historical artifacts. And one of the things that I wanted to point out that looked like a very interesting connection to Trump, which is he also gradually changed the government into tyranny, seeing no other way of turning men from the fear of God but to bring them into a constant dependence on his power. So we definitely see how Trump, he's been, the narrative lately is that he just wants to be a dictator for a day. He's going to fire all the people that don't agree with his policies and the way he's going to do things. I've even heard that there was going to be some sort of litmus test that he's going to make all of his new employees in the new government, when he takes back power and control, that he's going to have a test for them to make sure that they fall in to his, I guess, way of doing things. So I just wanted to start there with the Wikipedia page, and then we'll move on into Genesis. So here in Genesis chapter 10, Cush begot Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Yahweh. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before Yahweh, and beginning of the kingdom was Babel. So he was the king of Babel and many other places in the land of Shinar. And I wanted to point out the mighty one phrase here in this translation for New King James, and what that really meant in the Hebrew. And so in the Hebrew it's Gibor, which is often translated as mighty or mighty man. And you can see all the different ways it's translated, that same word. But he was either a warrior or a tyrant or a champion or a chief. So the largest connection we have with the Hebrew word Gibor, meaning mighty man or champion or chief, or even tyrant, is that the name Donald means world ruler or world wielder, and this is an actual article about the given name for Donald Trump. But if we go to a different source, which is just some baby website, baby names, it says the same thing, but also it says ruler or king of the world, great chief. So with the little bit of information we have biblically about Nimrod, we can see here that is a clue for us, that basically Trump is Nimrod. With the little bit of information we have, that's a pretty big clue. And Genesis 11, here we see it says that they were going to start building this Tower of Babel, and it says here, and they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." And so the biggest thing that we can see today is that Trump is a tower builder like Nimrod was, and he wants to make a name for himself. So, I mean, he puts his name all over all of these buildings, and he licenses his name, sells his name, and makes money off of his name. And some of these buildings he doesn't own, some of them he does, and he just makes a name for himself by selling his name. And so that's the easiest connection to make there with Nimrod and Trump there, considering there is not a lot of information on Nimrod. And so this article here calling that Donald failed attempts to erect the world's tallest building in New York City. He wanted to have the world's tallest building, but he was never able to accomplish it, much like Nimrod. It says in Jasher that the tower was destroyed. Today we would know that is true because there is not some giant tower in Babylon. It's just rubble at this point in the place that they speculate that it existed. And so the Nimrod of our day, Trump, is not able to do the same thing. Over the last 30 or 40 years, he actually tried to build or own or be involved in the construction of the world's tallest building. And this is a list of all of those buildings that he tried to be in power and control over or a part of, and he was never able to achieve that, just like Nimrod. And what's interesting is that on 9/11, he called in to a news station and it was like a 10-minute interview, and you should watch the whole thing. I'll put a clip of the part that I'm going to talk about here in this video, but he wanted to point out that now he has the tallest building in New York City, and it was a lie. He was like happy to have the tallest building again, considering the day and the event that had just occurred, that it was important for him to mention that now he owns the tallest building. It's really sickening. The whole interview is, if you look at it from a perspective that he's just not a good man, and kind of spiritually look at it with a spiritual lens of what he's saying. But I'll put the clip here.
Donald, you have one of the landmark buildings down in the financial district, 40 Wall Street. Did you have any damage, or did you know what's happened down there?
Well, it was an amazing phone call I made. 40 Wall Street actually was the second tallest building in downtown Manhattan, and it was actually, before the World Trade Center, was the tallest. And then when they built the World Trade Center, it became known as the second tallest, and now it's the tallest. And I just...
So moving on, there's just some other articles that I want to show here because I believe that spiritually the news, even though people don't want to trust it or they want to call it fake news or whatever, I think a lot of these headlines and the things that we see in the news are really just spiritual warnings. They're there for us to try to connect the dot of what's happening in the heavens, that spiritual battle that's ensuing between Satan and Yahweh. And so we have this example here of basically Trump's Tower of Babel. And so it's just talking about how he babbles a lot, but it's just a headline that it might seem sensational, but it's really pointing out who he is. He's Nimrod. Hold on, let's see. And then so here, this is an example of when Trump, when they wanted to rebuild the Twin Towers, he was so against the Freedom Tower that's there now because he wanted to be the one that designed and was responsible for it. He wanted to make it taller. He wanted to be the developer, and they just never went with him. They never used him to rebuild those towers, and he was angry about it. You can read many articles about how he wanted to become the developer and he never was able to get there. So I just want to kind of end it here. Just wanted to kind of make that connection for people that may have never seen it. Please share this video. I honestly am not making these videos for people that already think that Trump is the beast. I really want those people that already think that to use these videos to convince others that he is the beast and not to follow him and to repent of their ways. Don't put your faith in man anymore. Put your faith in Messiah, Yahusha, Jesus. And the time is very near. We have little time. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Please share this video. Like it wherever you see it. Stay tuned for a little message at the end that I'm putting at the end here. Thanks.
your Tower of Babel? Is he the one that you are building up to promote a breakthrough into heavenly places for the United States? My friend, they tried that back in Genesis 11, and it was a completely fruitless endeavor. And the only thing that came out of that was the division of the people. Sound familiar? Those folks thought they were doing the right thing, but God was not in it. It was legalistic. It was carnal. It was operating in a world system that has nothing to do with God. This is not the way for breakthrough. Believers are called to pray, and that's all. Be careful for nothing. That means worry about nothing at all, but in everything, every single thing, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God, and then he will give you peace. Not the peace that the world gives you, but the peace that only Jesus, the Prince of Peace, can give you. Running after moral agenda is just like what the Pharisees did, and we know how Jesus felt about them.